I am not one to usually spend time on weird sites, but one July evening a few months ago, I not only familiarized myself with their content, but signed up for a premium membership. I decided that $100 was not wasted. I was watching a live broadcast of a woman. It was a woman, housewife Jenna, as they called her, but I knew her real name was Kelly. Kelly was my wife. She was cheating on me. I was interested in their dialogue. My husband is better, of course. You're good, but he's fantastic, so don't stop trying. She smiled at him. Mario looked at her perplexed and asked, "Well, if he's so great, why are you cheating on him by coming here?" She replied without losing her smirk, "I didn't plan for it to happen. I also do it because I can get away with it and he'll never know. I actually love my husband with all my heart, and after 3 nights here I realize how much better he is than what I get here, and that makes me love and appreciate him even more." She laughed and added, "In fact, I'm probably doing him a favor by coming here." Like I said, the $100 was well spent because I was able to see what was going on with my beloved wife for much less than it would have cost for surveillance equipment or private investigators. You may be asking yourself how I ended up here. What happened before that night? What made me come to this site? That's a good question, and I suppose the most honest answer is chance. A rare bit of luck that turned my way. Not luck that my wife was cheating on me with Mario, but luck that I now knew she was cheating on me. Kelly and I have been married for a little over 8 years. We first met when we were in elementary school together. We grew up in a small town in central Illinois. She lived in town and I lived out of town. Her father owned the largest grain elevator in the county, and my father owned the largest grain farm in the county. Since our parents ran a business together, it was only natural that we met, went to school together, and became friends. I won't bore you with high school crushes, high school romances, and even college life. We both dated and even slept with other people. We weren't exclusive to each other, but deep down, I guess we always knew we were destined to be a couple. It was during my freshman year at the University of Illinois that we decided to become exclusive, and a short time later, I proposed to her. About a year and a half later, a week after graduation, we were married. We both earned degrees in business administration. Life was good. At least I thought it was good until that July night. Anyway, let me continue. 3 years ago, Kelly's parents retired and moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Kelly, her sister Amber, and two brothers Tom and Carl Gentry bought a 48% interest in the grain business from Tom Sr. He wanted to maintain a controlling interest for several years to keep them growing financially. Eventually, he would begin to reduce his share until they owned 100% of the stock. Amber is married to my friend Walter Swanson, Wally, who is also a farmer. He owns a farm that is only a few hundred acres smaller than mine. We live quite close to each other and spend some enjoyable time with them. Tom and Carl run the grain business together and Kelly is their controller, bookkeeper. Amber also works in the business, communicating with customers, handling grain sales, etc. It is a true family business with a few additional employees, mostly truck drivers and grain handlers. They also hire a few part-time employees during the height of harvest season. I think that's enough to continue the story of how I found out my wife was cheating on me with another guy over the internet and what happened after that. All four of the Gentry children spent a tremendous amount of extra time preparing a deal to buy a stake in the grain business from their father. I wasn't particularly involved, but I knew they would have to work hard to make the deal happen. There were meetings with banks, there were meetings with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, there were meetings with the insurers. Once the deal was finalized, they all ended up on the losing end. Fortunately, all of this happened in the winter, the slowest time of the year. For me, it was post-harvest time, so I didn't need Kelly on the farm as much as I did during the two busy times of the year. She herself didn't do any work on the farm, but with 2,200 acres of corn and soybeans, both of those times were very busy times for me, and I needed Kelly to run errands, etc. Anyway, you get the picture, and so, since we weren't busy, the girls, Kelly and Amber, decided they wanted to take a few days and go to a spa to relax and unwind. They booked the trip for 3 nights. The girls came back so rested and rejuvenated that they decided to repeat the trip in July when planting season was over. The following year, they booked another weekend trip. It was while visiting this spa that I saw a video online. But how did I find it? Dan Marvel, a field agent for the Illinois Department of Agriculture in our county, happened to stop by during a routine round of his area of responsibility. Kelly and I had known Dan since college, and he asked about her, and I mentioned that she was vacationing at Princess Spa. Dan threw me a funny look and said there was something interesting going on there that I'd be interested to know about. He said his cousin worked at this spa as a massage therapist and told him some pretty wild stories about what goes on there. He said they even had a website with a different name. I asked him what he was talking about, and he cautiously said he didn't want to go into details, but I should check it out. You don't know me, but I am a poker player on the internet. I sit on the internet and look for interesting things. Sometimes I end up on weird sites, but usually it's just other interesting things. So that night I did a little poking around on the internet and found that very site. It didn't take long to find the live stream and the game was on. I could tell you all about what happened that night, but why? You know what happened. I was hurt, crying, screaming, angry, depressed, and experiencing all the things a man experiences when he finds out his wife is cheating on him. I soon found out that it wasn't the first time she was cheating, because the spa had an archive folder, and I was able to find videos from 2 previous visits, as well as videos from the 2 previous nights Kelly and Amber had been there. By purchasing a premium membership, I was able to upload all of the videos by paying an additional $20 for each. I uploaded 2 videos from their first visit, 3 from their second visit, and 3 from their current trip. In total, I uploaded 8 videos for a total of $160. So, for $260, I had all the evidence I needed to divorce my wife. I just didn't yet have a plan for how I was going to do it. But I knew I needed to start now. I wouldn't wait a month or 2 weeks or even 1 week to accomplish what I had planned. It was important to me that the sooner we broke up, the better. She had had fun with another man at least 8 times, and I had video evidence. In fact, she had cheated on me with at least 2 different men, Mario and Steve, judging from the videos I had downloaded. I didn't know, nor was I interested in knowing if there were more. 2 men and 8 times was more than enough. I made several copies of the videos on DVD and put them in the safest place possible. When my father built the house, he installed a wall safe with access through a hidden panel in a built-in bookcase in the study. Once the copies were safely hidden, I deleted all mention of spa on my computer and deleted all the original files on my computer. Other than the DVD copies, there was no more trace of what I had in evidence. When all of this was done, I pulled out my cell phone and sent Kelly a text message on her cell phone. Kelly, it's Jack. I know exactly what you're doing at the Princess Spa, and I have proof to back it up. Don't you dare come back to this house if you ever decide to come back here. This house is no longer yours, and I will soon no longer be your husband. It's over between us. My attorney will contact you in the next few days. At that time, arrangements can be made for you to come and pick up your personal belongings. Apparently, Kelly turned off her phone and didn't get my message until the next morning, because I never heard from her that evening. But early the next morning, my phone started ringing. I knew from the caller ID that it was Kelly, so I didn't pick it up. Soon, I heard her leave me a voicemail message. Jack, what are you talking about, honey? I have no idea what's going on over there, but why on earth would you text me such horrible things? Amber and I are packing right now, and I'll be home in a couple hours. I don't know what you think of me, but you're wrong. I'll see you when I get there, and then we can talk. I love you, Jack. A short time later, my cell phone rang, and again, I didn't answer it, but sent a message to voicemail. There it was again, the same message, almost word for word. I wondered if she had written down what she was going to say. When I didn't answer the call, a text message came a few minutes later. It was like a broken record because she repeated almost verbatim what she had said in the 2 phone messages. Since I didn't need to talk to her, I decided to send her a quick text reply to let her know I got her messages, but decided not to talk to her. I just texted her. I wonder if Mario would guess what you're talking about, honey, if I asked him? Why don't you have him call me and I'll ask him? Said what I said about not going back to the house, I meant it. Don't think you can come home. You can't. It's over, Kelly. I didn't get any more messages, but later in the afternoon I got a call from Kelly. She left a message. Jack, we need to talk. I'm staying with Amber until you and I can talk and put this terrible misunderstanding behind us. Please call me on my cell phone and talk to me. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I didn't answer the call. The next morning I went to my bank and started a second safety deposit box in my name only. I put 1 copy of the DVDs in the box along with the original prenuptial agreement. I had an appointment with my attorney at 11 a.m., so I made an extra copy of the prenuptial agreement. I was sure he already had such a copy, but I didn't want to take any chances lest there be a problem. At the appointed time, I walked into the attorney's office where Kelly was sitting. She looked up at me as I walked in, and I could see that she looked like hell. It was obvious she had been crying. Her hair was unkempt, and I realized she hadn't gotten much sleep because she had dark circles under her eyes. She always looked like that when she was overworked. Kelly said to me, "Jack, we need to talk about this." I asked, "How did you know I was coming here?" She replied, "Richard called me when you made the appointment." At that time, Richard Warner, my attorney, walked into the reception area and asked us both to come into his office. My anger was simmering in the back of my mind, so I said, "No, Richard, we are not going into your office together. You violated my trust by calling Kelly, and I need a straight answer from you right now. You're going to represent me? Just me?" You know lawyers are supposed to be smart as hell, but this guy must have been a no-brainer because he said, "No, Jack, if this keeps up, I'm going to represent Kelly." Turns out he decided that the grain business was a better client for him than my farm. In fact, it probably was, because in addition to the grain business, he also had all the members of the Gentry family. I had my own opinion on the matter, and I figured that in time he would realize the fallacy of his reasoning. "Okay, Richard, please provide me at 4 p.m. today with all the originals of my documents you have, as well as all copies of the contracts and my other papers. I will either pick them up or call a courier. I just want you to know that I appreciate the work you have done for me in the past, but you are making a big mistake, Richard. I will be seeking legal services elsewhere, and my new attorney will contact you as soon as possible." Kelly had stood silently throughout this conversation, but now asked pleadingly, "Jack, why don't you want to talk to me now to clear the air?" "Because, Kelly, obviously Richard values you as a client more than he values me, and I can't talk to you without legal representation, and I don't trust him." Richard interjected into the conversation. "Jack, you know I've always been straightforward with you, so you have nothing to fear." "Oh, Richard, I do have something to fear. As the saying goes, you can't serve two masters, and it's clear who you've chosen as your master. Besides, you already proved you can't be trusted when you summoned Kelly here. Goodbye, my attorney will contact you." I heard Kelly start crying again as I walked out the door. Damn, now I had to find a new lawyer. I knew that David Warner was a very capable attorney and competed with Richard Warner. I thought that might be a good choice, but I wouldn't dive into the case without making inquiries. Attorneys, accountants, bankers, and insurance agents are the people you go to bed with, and it's better to really know what you have before you pull back the covers. I've learned that the attorney-client relationship is most important because they almost always have confidential information. I knew several people who had used David's services, so I called the law firm and asked if they had a list of references. The receptionist said they had a list and happily agreed to email it to me. There were 4 friends of mine on the list, so I decided to check in with 3 of them and get their opinion of the work David had done. It didn't take long because each of the 3 quickly gave me a glowing recommendation for David. I had no doubt that he would do a good job for me. I didn't contact the 4th friend because it was Wally, and I didn't want to involve him since he's married to Amber, Kelly's sister. I called David's office a second time. I gave my name and asked if I could make an appointment to see him after 4 p.m. The receptionist told me that he was busy until 4:30 p.m., but she would check with him to see if he could see me after that. I realized that there was a possibility that he wouldn't see me, but I had to try. When she got back on the line, she told me that Mr. Warner would indeed see me at 4:30 p.m., but it would be a short appointment as he had other commitments for the evening. I agreed and told her I would be there shortly before 4:30 p.m. She replied, "I look forward to seeing you at that time, Mr. Hagan. By the way, my name is Samantha. I'm David's wife." At 4 p.m., I went into Richard's office to pick up my paperwork, but they hadn't copied everything yet. It was obvious they were stalling, hoping I would change my mind. I have to tell you that I exploded and told them that I had better get all my legal documents in the next 15 minutes or they would be contacted by my new attorney. They asked who that might be, and I told them they would find out soon enough. After that, the office began to bustle. I think 3 people were making copies at the same time, and within 20 minutes I had all the sheets. I still had time to get to David's office by the appointed time, so I didn't make a fuss about being late for the deadline. I met with David, and he agreed to be my personal and business attorney. I asked him if I could leave all the papers I received in his custody, and he agreed to put them in his vault until we had time to review them together. We agreed to meet the next day, Tuesday, at 9 a.m. to go over all the papers and outline a divorce plan. Leaving the office at 5:30 p.m., I smiled at Samantha and asked, "So Samantha, am I in trouble or are your plans for tonight still on track?" She smiled back at me and replied, "You've done a great job, Mr. Hagen. Our evening will go as planned. I wish all of our clients were as prompt as you are. But from now on, please call me Sam." "Thank you, Sam, and you please call me Jack." The next morning, we went through all my business papers and contracts. I can't discuss it here, although you know, attorney-client privilege and all that. But I can tell you that, in David's opinion, everything was in order from a business standpoint. We broke for lunch, and David and Sam invited me to join them at one of the local diners. I agreed and met them there as I wanted to stop by my bank before we continued on our way after lunch. They turned out to be a charming couple, and we had a very pleasant lunch together. I found out that they both went to school a few years earlier than I did. David said that he was actually in the same class as Tom Gentry, but they weren't close. I guess they were too competitive with each other. I learned that they had been married for about 10 years and had 2 daughters, ages 6 and 3. They showed me pictures and both little girls turned out to be very cute. It was obvious that they were taking their mom's example. They both had beautiful smiles, just like Sam. I think that lunch did me a lot of good. It made things a lot easier with my new lawyer. But the negative side of the lunch was that I realized that my life partner was no longer by my side. David and Sam were so good together and reminded me of what it was like with Kelly before I found out about her cheating. I felt sad and my eyes misted up a couple times. David didn't notice anything, but I could see that Sam did, and a concerned look appeared on her face. So after lunch, I went to the bank and made a few changes to protect my assets. I also picked up a check for $5,000 made out to David Warner's law office. This will be an upfront payment for work they will do for me in the near future. David hadn't asked for anything yet, but I knew he would appreciate my efforts. I returned to the office at 1:30 p.m. to continue our meeting. Sam told me that David was on the phone and led me into the small conference room where we were meeting. She asked if I wanted coffee or anything else, and I said no, that was fine. She sat down next to me in one of the chairs and held out her hand to me. "David hasn't told me what's going on, Jack, but I have a guess as to what this afternoon will be about, judging by your reaction. I see a wedding ring on you, so I can assume it has to do with your wife. If you'll let me, I'll ask David to let me sit with you this afternoon while we sort out what you want to tell us." I was on the verge of breaking down again, so I just nodded in agreement. My anger subsided for a while, but apparently the emotion of being offended was stronger. It would be nice to have a woman with sensitivity like theirs around. I realized that I might need Sam's sympathetic presence. At the afternoon meeting, I told the whole story of how I found out about Kelly's cheating. A couple of times I snapped, and Sam stepped into the conversation to sympathize and comfort me. Once I regained control of my emotions, I informed them of my intentions. Unless something happens to make me change my mind, I plan to file for divorce and honor the terms of the prenuptial agreement. David and I discussed the prenuptial agreement at length. The terms are roughly as follows. I keep 100% of all farm assets, real estate, and personal property. Kelly retains 100% of the assets of the grain business. Kelly gets 50% of our financial assets unless there has been cheating. If there has been adultery, Kelly gets only $25,000 for each year of infidelity, not 50%. Jack receives only $25,000 for each year of infidelity, not 50%. The family's personal assets are divided 50% regardless of the circumstances. "Jack, I need you to show me proof of infidelity," David asks. "No, David, I have the proof, but I won't show it to you or anyone else until we are forced to go to court about it. Then I will show them to the judge." David insists, "Jack, I need to see them to make sure we're dealing with infidelity. I need to be sure." "David, you have to trust me. I have proof, but I loved Kelly and I don't want anyone to see what I saw unless absolutely necessary." Sam touched David's arm and nodded her head affirmatively. David reluctantly agreed. Over the next few days, Kelly called me several times and left messages. I didn't return her calls and deleted the messages without listening to them. David called me and said, We set up a meeting for Thursday. You, me, Kelly, and Richard. At 10:30 Thursday morning, David and I drove to Richard's office to meet with him and Kelly. When we arrived, I saw that Kelly's car was already in the parking lot, so we walked to the office. Richard's secretary ushered us into a small conference room where we waited only a couple minutes before Richard and Kelly walked in. Kelly looked much better than when I had seen her in Richard's office earlier in the week. She had obviously cleaned herself up for the meeting because she was just beautiful. I tried my best to hide my feelings because I didn't want her to see how much my heart ached for her. She smiled at me and said, "Jack, I hope we can finally talk and put this misunderstanding behind us. I miss you and I want to come home." I didn't say anything back to her because I felt like my voice would break if I said anything at that moment. I needed to get my emotions under control. It wasn't easy, but I had to do it. David spoke up. "We are here to discuss the divorce proceedings to dissolve Jack and Kelly's marriage. I believe we should begin the discussion by giving each side time to express their thoughts and opinions on how this young couple should move on with their lives." Richard nodded and interjected, "My client believes this is a complete misunderstanding and is glad for the opportunity to clear the air and talk to her husband." I was having a hard time controlling my emotions, but Richard did me a great favor. He had reignited the anger in me, and now it had reached a boiling point. I knew I could control the anger, and it made it easier to control my emotions, resentment, and frustration with Kelly. "I'm going to be okay." I said, "I don't mind, Richard. Your client can talk to her husband." I looked across the table at Kelly and said, "Kelly, here are some facts. When we got married, we signed a prenuptial agreement and amended it 2 years ago when you bought your father's business. I brought copies of the amended agreement for all parties." Kelly looked at this with some shock. She said quietly, "But Jack, I don't want a divorce. I want to be your wife. Why can't we just forget this misunderstanding, go home and be happy again?" I let that remark pass my ears and continued. "We wanted to protect our personal interests and at the same time capitalize on our marriage. The prenup was originally intended to protect the property that had been in my family for generations. Then, when you bought your father's business, it was also designed to protect the same assets that have long belonged to your family. In the event of a divorce, our agreement clearly states that I will receive 100% of the assets from my family, and you will receive 100% of the assets from your family. All debts associated with those business assets will go to the business, and the other party will have no liability. Because we worked together to build our marital assets, our agreement provides for certain monetary and property divisions depending on the circumstances of our divorce. As this document makes clear, you are entitled to all of your personal belongings, including clothing, jewelry, a car, and other items in which a man would not be interested. Likewise, I have the same right on my side. All other non-farm personal property such as furniture, art, electronics, etc., should be split 50/50ths. Farm property such as grain bins, machinery, equipment, etc., should remain 100% mine as it is an integral part of the farming operation. The monetary distribution in a divorce is 50% of the financial assets unless there has been infidelity. There are two exceptions to this distribution in the event of infidelity, as you can see in the document. If you divorce me because of infidelity, I will only receive $25,000 per year or $200,000, not 50%. In the event I divorce you because of infidelity, the distribution will be $25,000 per year or $200,000, not 50%. I'm going to ask you some questions, Kelly. How you answer them will determine if I file for divorce and on what grounds. Obviously, it will also determine the outcome of any monetary distribution. If our marriage has any chance of surviving, Kelly, you must answer every question with the utmost honesty. If you refuse to answer or I catch you in a lie, it's over. Is that clear? Are you willing to do this to have a chance to save our marriage?" Kelly sat there with a completely stunned look on her face as I read the prenup to her. She quickly came to her senses and replied, "Yes, Jack, I will answer your questions and I will answer honestly. I love you and I want our marriage to survive. I will do anything to get you to stop this and let me come home." "Kelly, I'd like to get these questions on tape. Are you willing to do that?" She hesitated a little this time and turned to Richard, who had been practically silent up to this point. Richard, being a typical lawyer, said, "Kelly, I wouldn't advise you to do that, but you do what you think is right. To this, my attorney David said, Kelly, I agree with Richard and would advise you or my client not to tape it. But it's Jack who needs to be convinced, not Richard or me. So you do what you think is right. Kelly replied, I will do whatever it takes to overcome this misunderstanding. So yes, record it. I have no objection to recording any conversation between Jack and me. Now, David and I took the tape recorder with us and placed it on the table so that all voices would be picked up by the microphones. Kelly asked, Jack, what questions do you have? Kelly, I want to ask you if you've been faithful to me, but I want to ask it in 3 different time periods. The first period is from the day we promised to be exclusive with each other until the day we got engaged. Were you faithful to me during that period? Kelly smiled and replied, Yes, Jack, I was faithful to you during that period. She thought she was scoring points now, but her smile was quickly replaced by shock when I said, Well, that's lie number 1. You couldn't even answer the very first question honestly. I should get up and leave right now, but I won't just yet. Snap. Are you telling me you weren't having fun with Larry Evandale 2 days after we swore exclusivity? Is that what you're telling me? Larry was that kind of guy, Kelly. He needed to brag, and he did brag to me that you invited him over to your house Tuesday night when your parents weren't home, and he entertained you, silly, on your own bed. In parting before he left, he said, Jack, she really enjoyed it, and I'm sure I'll have the pleasure of repeating that performance many times in the future, perhaps even after you marry that whore. You could tell he was making it all up, but strangely enough, Amber was nearby and happened to overhear the whole thing. She came up to me after Larry left and said, Jack, Kelly loves you and won't cheat on you again. She was just saying goodbye to him. Please don't do anything stupid. You see, Kelly, you've already lied to me, but I can understand your act, even if it makes me feel bad. I'll give you a pass on that lie, but no more passes. From now on, tell me the truth or suffer the consequences. I didn't trust you after that incident, so I spent the next 6 months watching you like a hawk. In those 6 months, you did nothing to make me suspicious, so I asked you to marry me and gave you the ring you still wear on your finger today. I knew you were probably hoping it would happen sooner, but I wasn't ready to trust you yet, so you had to wait. Question #2. During our engagement, from the day you got the ring until our wedding day, did you cheat on me, Kelly? Without hesitating for a second, she answered, No, absolutely not. I knew what that answer would be, so I said, I know it's true because, you see, I still didn't trust you completely, so I kept watching you all this year until I felt I could trust you. I was sure you had been faithful to me all along. Richard, to his credit, asked for a break. He wanted to consult with his client and give her time to readjust. He had noticed, as had I, that during my tirade about Larry Evandale, Kelly had become very emotional and was on the verge of a breakdown. He wanted to give her a chance to recover before we continued. David and I took a lunch break, drove past his office, picked up Sam and went to a local diner for a blue plate specialty. Sam asked how things were going, and David replied, I think Jack's doing well. Nothing has come up yet, but he's laid the groundwork for an honest answer during the marital period. If she tells him everything, he may want a divorce, but he may also realize that she really wants to save her marriage. It will be a tough choice, but I think he can make it. Of course, if she lies, Jack will have to decide what to do next. Sam looked at me. Her feminine intuition turned on, and I realized she could see my pain. I smiled weakly and said, It's not easy at all. Why do people do such stupid things and cause so much pain in their lives and in the lives of those they love? She extended her hand over mine and said, If only we knew Jack, we could punch them in the face before they get so stupid. Of course, that made me laugh, and David laughed too. Even in such a difficult time, I could laugh. I think it's a testament to the resilience of humanity. People grieve at funerals, but they laugh at the same time. I think people grieve at divorce, but can laugh too. I smiled at Sam and said, Thank you, Sam, I really needed that. She only nodded. Shortly after 1 p.m., we were back in Richard's office and in a meeting with Kelly. Before asking the next question, I reminded Kelly, You have to answer these questions completely honestly. If you lie about anything, it will mean the end of our meeting and the absence of any hope for our marriage. Do you understand that? Kelly replied, Yes, I understand, and I will tell you the truth. Kelly, I asked, from the day we got married until now, have you ever cheated on me? I saw tears come to her eyes and I felt so sorry for her because I knew how much she was hurting, but I couldn't comfort her or let her off the hook. I wanted her so badly to care about our marriage enough to confess everything. I didn't know if I could stop this divorce or not if she told me the whole truth. However, I knew that if she told the whole truth, it meant she cared enough to try and save our marriage. Yes, Jack, I cheated on you, she replied. She put her head down on the table with her arms crossed and just sobbed. I'm so sorry, Jack. Will you ever be able to forgive me? I asked Richard and David to leave the room because I had a few more questions for Kelly and I didn't want to embarrass her in front of these people. They both objected, but I insisted that David leave, and Kelly nodded to Richard that she wanted him to leave as well. I had her confession to cheating on me taped. That would be all I needed at the divorce hearing, and I didn't want the rest of my questions and her answers taped, so I turned it off. Kelly, answer these questions. When, where, who, and why? She snorted a few times. Oh, Jack, I'm so sorry, but it happened this weekend at the Princess Spa. One of the massage therapists named Mario is who I cheated with. I don't know exactly why it happened, Jack. I guess just the passion of the moment would be the best way to describe the reason. I sat there for a minute, hoping she would continue, but she didn't say a word, just sat with her head down and sniffled. Finally, she raised her head and looked at me with a questioning look. Jack, is there any hope that you'll forgive me? I didn't want to make it sound like we were in court, but in fact we were, so I asked her, Kelly, is it true? The whole truth? And nothing but the truth? She looked at me with what I would call a strange look. It was a look of surprise. There was a question in that look, but there was no way to ask it. It was something like, I wonder how much he knows. At last she said, Yes, Jack, he did. I'm sorry. At that moment, my heart was breaking. But against all odds, I managed to hide both the pain of her betrayal, my anger at her lies, and keep my composure. I got up from the table, walked to the door, and called David and Richard back into the room. I looked at both men and said, This meeting is over. With those words, I walked to the door and turned around. Kelly, I am divorcing you on the grounds of infidelity. The terms of the prenuptial agreement will be enforced. She was shocked and asked, But why, Jack? I have admitted my infidelity and I am asking you to forgive me and save our marriage. Please, Jack, please. I love you so much. Please forgive me. Kelly, you lied to me. You didn't care enough about our marriage to put everything on the line. If you had, I'm not sure I would have been able to stay married to you, but you didn't even give me a chance. It was all in your hands and you lied. I know you cheated on Mario more than once and I have proof. I warned you that you should tell the truth, but you don't care enough about me and our marriage to do that. It's over. I turned around, opened the door, and started to walk in. She screamed, Wait, Jack, I'll tell you everything. Everything you want to know. Please don't leave me. I turned around again, looked at her with all the resentment and anger I was capable of, and spat out, You were warned. You had your chance. But you thought you could get away with just one episode, and you lied. You had your chance, Kelly. And I yelled back at her, It's over. David hurried after me and finally caught up with me as I was getting into the car. He grabbed my hand and asked, Do you really want to sue for infidelity? Yes, I do. She had her chance. I guess I must have somehow misjudged her all these years. I wanted her to care about me enough to tell me everything, but now she can't even be honest with me. Come on, file the papers. I went to our house, now my own, and grabbed a beer from the fridge. I actually took two, went to my office, sat at my desk, and drank the first mug in almost one sitting. I drank the second one more slowly, sitting and thinking about everything that had happened. I had several copies of the videotapes hidden in safe places, but I didn't think I would have to make them public, since I had her confession. I looked up when I realized I had left the office without the tape. I quickly called David and said, Is that Jack? Did you take the tape of Kelly's confession before you ran after me? Oh shit, I heard him say. No, Jack, I didn't. I rushed after you to catch you and completely forgot about the tape. I'm so sorry, Jack. I'd been so careful about everything I'd planned, and then, because I was hurt and angry at the same time, I'd ruined everything by running out of there without the tape. Shit. David, why don't you call Richard and see if you can stop by there and pick it up? But I think their answer will be something like this. We thought you had everything you needed when you left, so we just erased everything. Sorry. I'll be shocked if you can actually get it. But don't worry, even if you can't, I'll still have enough evidence to sue you for infidelity. Okay, dude. I'm sorry. I know you didn't want to use the videotapes, but now you're going to have to do it if she fights the infidelity charge. Don't worry about it, David. It'll all work out. Hanging up the phone, I walked over to the fridge and grabbed another beer. Damn, how could I have been so stupid? I sat up and watched the evening news before I went to bed. I thought I heard a car pull into the yard, so I slowly got up from my chair and walked to the back door. As I stepped out onto the porch, I saw a dark figure. A moment before the lights went out, something hit me in the back of the head, and all I saw was a bright light, and then I was plunged into total darkness. Beep, 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 is what I heard. I didn't immediately realize that the sound was coming from me. I opened my eyes and tried to turn slightly to my right to see what it was when an excruciating pain came over me with all its force. I felt like my chest was about to explode, and the pain hit me right in the head, producing flashes of blue and silver stars. What the hell? I thought. I heard a slight rustle nearby, felt a rush of something in my body, and was out again. The next time I heard the beep, I opened my eyes and looked around as far as I could without moving. I had learned my lesson from the first time. I saw the nurse sitting in the chair next to me. I tried to slowly turn around again, but I couldn't. Hi, Jack. My name is Susan, and I am your nurse. Please don't try to move, okay? Everything is going to be okay, and I will explain everything to you, but please lie still. Do you understand me? Something felt like it was stuck in my throat, but I was able to nod my head slightly, so I nodded that yes, I understood. Jack, I need to go tell the doctor that you've regained consciousness, and then we'll be right back here, okay? I nodded again that I understood. It finally came to me that I must have been injured and ended up in the hospital, but I couldn't remember anything about how it happened. I guessed that eventually someone would tell me about it, so I just lay there with my eyes closed until I heard someone approach me again. Mr. Hagen, Jack, I'm Dr. Julius. You were seriously injured in an attack during the burglary of your home. Now that you've regained consciousness, I'm sure you'll be fine. But you had to be restrained to prevent you from injuring yourself further with excessive movements. I'm sure you felt a lot of pain when you tried to move yesterday, didn't you? I had no reason to smile, but I know a slight smile appeared on my face as I nodded affirmatively again at the pain. Yes, we should have been a little more careful with the retainers so you wouldn't be in so much pain. I'm really sorry about that. I think we can remove the retainers now, Nurse Johnson. But Mr. Hagen, don't try anything on your own yet, okay? I nodded and pointed to the tube in my throat. Yes, we can also remove the ventilator. Nurse Johnson will take care of that. The restraints were removed and the tube was removed as well. My throat was sore and I couldn't speak. I was given a sip of water and after a while I was able to speak, but my voice was very hoarse and hurt a lot, so I just whispered. Will someone tell me what happened to me? Dr. Julius said, Jack, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. You just regained consciousness and are off the ventilator. Your throat will be sore for at least a few hours and we want you to rest for now. Nurse Johnson will sit with you. And after you rest, we need to let the police know that you can talk. I'll give you some time before they call you in to recover a bit, but you'll need to talk to them, and they can tell you everything that happened. I can tell you that medically you have serious injuries, including a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and numerous contusions. You also suffered a punctured lung with one of your ribs, causing your lung to deflate. But the medics arrived in time to resuscitate you, and once the damage to your lung was repaired, we were able to inflate it again. You were very lucky, Jack. If you hadn't been found quickly, you probably wouldn't have been saved. You were unconscious for 5 days, regained consciousness for a couple minutes yesterday, and passed out again until today. We will monitor you closely for a few more days, and then you can probably go home. As promised, I spent the rest of that day at rest, with Nurse Johnson sitting next to me the entire time. Any sudden movement caused severe pain, so I lay still. Toward noon, I was able to sit up, and with great difficulty, I was able to use the facilities. Susan, Nurse Johnson, and I talked a little, and I learned that she had been in school about 3 years later than I was. Her name was Susan Fisk then. She married Chad Johnson, and they had a 3-year-old daughter, Emily. Apparently, Chad was like Kelly and was cheating on Susan, so she divorced him. I told her about what was going on with Kelly, and of course, she was sympathetic. Early the next morning, I received two police detectives, Harold Robbins and Josh Carter. I asked them to tell me what had happened to me before they started asking too many questions. Detective Robbins said, "It appears that this is a robbery in which you were assaulted. We found a 2x4 sheet on the porch of the house next to you, and it had your hair and blood on it. There were no fingerprints on it, so we assumed whoever used it was wearing gloves. There were no signs of forced entry on the door of your house, but of course that's because you went out on the porch and the door was already open." He continued, "When we searched the house, we found several paintings removed from the walls, an empty strongbox lying in one of the drawers of the writing desk, all the file cabinets in the study ransacked, the drawers and closets in the bedroom searched, and in the master bedroom the drawers and shelves of the jewelry box empty. We see signs of robbery, but of course we have no idea what exactly was stolen." Detective Carter entered the conversation. "When you are able to get home, you will have to examine everything and determine exactly what was stolen. The doctor told us that it will be another 3 or 4 days before you can go home. At that time, we'll have you look everything over and we'll update the reports." Robbins cut to the chase again and said it was time to ask some questions. "What do you remember about the attack and what happened afterward?" "Well," I said, "not much, I'm afraid. I'd had a couple of beers and was watching the evening news when I heard a car drive into the yard. I got up to see what it was about, went out on the porch and saw a hint of a person, sort of in the shadows or darkness, and then the lights went out. I don't remember seeing or hearing anything else until yesterday afternoon. I'm afraid I can't help in deciding who did it." "Well," Robbins said, "I think we still need to ask you some questions that will help us get to the bottom of this. Where was your wife when this happened?" "My wife and I are separated. We're in the process of getting a divorce, so I have no idea where she was at that moment," I said. "Tell me, Mr. Hagen, can I call you Jack?" "Yes, of course you can. Is your divorce going amicably, or are there differences between you?" "I guess I'd say not very much. She's disputing the grounds on which I plan to file for divorce." "And what are those grounds, Jack?" "I plan to sue on the grounds of infidelity. We entered into a prenuptial agreement and her amount under it is considerably less than in a divorce, so that's what she's contesting." "Well, if I may say so, that gives her ample grounds to harm you." "Detective," I added, "I just don't believe she can harm me." "I can't believe it." "That's all right," he interjected. "We'll look into the matter thoroughly so that we can conduct a thorough investigation. Are there other people who have a reason to do this to you? Do you have a business relationship that may have gone sour? Have you had disagreements with neighbors, friends, relatives, or anyone else?" "No, I can't think of anything." "Okay, Jack. I know we'll have to do a full inventory of the stolen goods when you're able, but two things I want to ask you now. Did you have any cash in the house, perhaps in a safe? And how much of it was there? Also, did you have anything else in the house, including jewelry and art that would have significant value? I mean thousands of dollars or more." "Yes, there was some cash in the safe. I'd say it was about $8,000. I usually keep about $10,000 cash on hand, but I know I've been paying off bills lately, so it was probably about $8,000. There was some nice jewelry, but probably only a few worth over $1,000. Nothing else of value that I can remember at the moment." I didn't bother telling them about the safe hidden behind the bookcase because, one, the detective had never mentioned it, and two, I was sure no one would have found it, and I wanted to keep it a secret if at all possible. "Well, Jack, I think that's it for today. If you remember anything, please give me a call, and when you're ready to go home, let me know so we can take inventory. If we have any other questions, we'll stop by here or at your house if you're there." Over the next 4 days, I got better and better. Most days, I had enough time to sleep, but occasionally I would get up and talk to Susan. I had several visitors, including Wally, Amber, David, and Sam. Kelly never came to see me, and other than Amber, none of her family came to see me. I guess under the circumstances that is understandable, but I would have welcomed such a visit. Richard, Kelly's lawyer, did visit me, though. We had been friends for years before the whole divorce thing started, and I was glad he came. Everyone told me they were sorry I was hurt and wished me well. Amber and Sam kissed me on the cheek before leaving, and both of them had tears coming to their eyes. In those 4 days, I went through some difficult moments. Even though I was asleep, I knew that sometimes I would have bad dreams. I would wake up in a panic with my heart pounding and tears in my eyes. Several times when I woke up, I didn't realize where I was, but Susan was always there to comfort me with gentle words and touch. On at least one occasion, I know I woke up screaming, but I don't remember the terrible dream or the reason for the screaming. I later learned that she stayed with me in the hospital even when she wasn't on duty and only went home to clean up and change my clothes every day. She told me that this was due to events in my marriage that were especially close to her heart, and she wanted to be there for me. I really appreciated that too. Dr. Julius came in to see me and informed me that I was being discharged. I was very happy about this and immediately started getting ready to leave. Susan helped me pack and rolled me out into the lobby where Wally and Amber were already waiting to take me home. She wished me luck and gave me a big hug. I know she really cared about me and I was grateful for that, but my life was in turmoil, including my marriage and health, so I didn't pursue a relationship with her. I told her I would like to call her sometime in the future, and that was the end of it. When I walked into my house, I saw that the place was still a mess. Wally and Amber offered to help me clean it up, but I told them I'd rather leave it as it was until I looked around. I promised them that I would call them for help when I was ready. They reluctantly agreed and left me alone. The first thing I did was go into the office and check the safe behind the bookcase. It had everything in it, including cash, certificates of deposit, a few stocks and bonds. It was obvious that no one had found the safe, or all of those things would have been stolen too. The DVD of Kelly's cheating was intact too. I looked around the rest of the office, and other than the cash, my laptop, and some numbered fingerprints of Terry Redlin, nothing was missing. I noticed that there were bank and credit card statements lying on the desk, which meant someone had looked through them. I called both banks and warned them that my account numbers might have been compromised and to be on the lookout for unusual activity. A couple weeks later, the robbery investigation was moving slowly because the police didn't have any evidence to link anyone. Detectives Robbins and Carter frequently updated me on the progress of the investigation, but so far no additional leads had emerged. They mentioned that since no valuables had been stolen, attempts to trace them through fences, as is done in some crimes, had hit a dead end. In their last conversation, they both made it clear that the case would be put on hold until hard evidence came to light. In the initial stages of the investigation, they asked some serious questions about Kelly and me. For the most part, I was open and frank with them. One thing I was sure of was that Kelly would not hurt me, and why would she take what she would have gotten in the divorce anyway? I guess the detectives agreed with that reasoning as well, because nothing came of it. I opened new bank accounts and printed new checks because I felt my old accounts were somewhat compromised. Fortunately, there was no action that I couldn't explain, but I still felt more comfortable opening new accounts. I bought a new laptop and reorganized everything in the office. I was back in business. I sat down to pay some bills that had accumulated during my absence and came across an account for Red S Inc. For the first time since the robbery, a light bulb went off in my head. Red SS stood for Remote Electronic Data Storage Solutions. I had video surveillance of the yard. It covered the house, the grain bins, and the machine shed. The video was fed into a computer in my grain office, located next to the grain bins and dryer. Each night, the video was uploaded to RedSS as a backup storage system. It was stored with them, and I paid a monthly fee based on the amount of data stored. Every month, I logged in and deleted the oldest data, so that the fee would be minimal. I hadn't deleted anything since the robbery. I had the video. I immediately went to the REDSS website, selected the day of the robbery from the archive, and downloaded it to my laptop to view. I hoped the quality would be good enough to determine who attacked and robbed me. If it was good, I would copy it to DVD and give it to Detectives Robbins and Carter. That would get the investigation going again. As I went through the day's records, I realized there was nothing there that I could give to the detectives, and I realized that now they would never solve the crime. The rest of my bills were paid, and I began to plan how I was going to live my life. I decided to contact an old friend of mine from my college days who worked for Cargill, one of the largest grain merchants in the U.S. Through him, I arranged a meeting with the powers that be in their purchasing department. It's amazing how people's connections can help get things done. About 2 weeks later, I coordinated my plans with Cargill and took a short trip to Las Vegas. I ended up flying to Phoenix because I had business there and then went to Vegas to do a little gambling. 2 days later, I got home and put all my plans into action. I called David and asked him to call Gentry Grain and set up an appointment for me to meet Kelly, her brothers Tom and Carl, and sister Amber. I told him that he should mention that due to the impending divorce, the state-required grain supply would no longer be adequate because they would not be able to include my grain stored there. I asked David to tell them that I wanted to sit down and discuss the situation with them and come to some sort of resolution. I think David shocked them because they readily agreed to meet with me. Apparently, they hadn't thought about what would happen if my grain was no longer part of the equation. I walked into the office and greeted them all. Hello, Tom, Carl, Amber, Kelly. I think you understand one of the reasons I decided we should sit down and work out some issues. Tom started to say something, but I held up my hand and said, I think I called this meeting myself, and I suggest you all just sit down and listen to what I have to say before you make any comments. Frankly, I think it would be in everyone's best interest if you would do so. First of all, I'd like to end this divorce if you will. I apologize for keeping Kelly on my back for so long. I placed the latest draft of the divorce on the table in front of Kelly and told her, Sign this, please. She replied, Jack, I don't want a divorce. No matter what you think, I wasn't worth throwing away all the good years we had, and I'd like you to forgive me and work out our problems. I certainly don't want to do that here in front of my brothers and sister. Kelly, we have to end this now. There's no tomorrow for our marriage, and the sooner you sign those papers, the sooner we can both move on with our lives. She blushed and whispered, If you have to divorce me, I'll still struggle with the infidelity issue. It's the least you can do for me. I knew she would play that card, but of course I was prepared for it. If you decide to fight me on the issue of Kelly's infidelity, I'll have no choice but to submit this DVD as evidence in court. And I tossed a copy of the DVD on the table along with the divorce papers. If you're wondering what it is, it's a videotape of all 8. Yes, I said 8 times you cheated on me at the spa. Amber's face turned bright red and she threw a dagger at Kelly. I didn't cheat. Kelly, how could you do that? You told me you did the same things I did when I was approached, and you brushed them off. How could you do that to Jack? Yes, Amber, that's exactly what she did. She entertained Mario that first night when Steven approached you. Then she entertained Steven the next evening. On your second visit, she entertained Mario all 3 nights. So yes, 8 videotapes of you cheating on me with Mario and Steve should solve my infidelity problem. Sign the divorce papers right now, Kelly, or I'll take this to court. I'm sick of dealing with you. I could see that Tom and Carl were shocked as well, and Amber was quietly crying as Kelly signed the divorce papers. I left her 1 copy and put the rest in my briefcase. Kelly had a stunned expression on her face and unshed tears in her eyes over what I couldn't say for sure, but it didn't matter. I could see that she was shocked that I had evidence of multiple instances of infidelity, but she wasn't done being shocked yet. Now let's move on to the other issue before us, the question of grain. I can see that you are all shocked by what I have just told you, so I will make this quick but unfortunately worse. The bad news is that after this divorce, you will no longer include the value of the grain stored with me in your inventory, and you will be in violation of your grain storage license and loan terms. The good news is that I went to your father, made my case to him, and he agreed to sell me his 52% interest in the business. There was no right of first refusal clause in your contract with him, so I don't think Richard did the best thing by buying it for you. I didn't show him proof of your deception, but he believed I had it, so it didn't matter to him. He knew the company would be in trouble without my involvement, so he sold me his stock, and now I am the majority shareholder of Gentry Grain Inc. Each of you owns 12%, and all of you together, you are outnumbered with 48%. The bad news is that I have agreed to sell a controlling interest in Gentry Grain to Cargill. They are always looking for new and promising grain businesses, and Gentry Grain fits the bill at the best price. The good news is that you have the opportunity to sell them your shares at the same price I negotiated with them. I recommend that you do just that. I negotiated a very good price. The bad news is that someone else now owns your company, and they will be evaluating the staff to see who brings value to the company. The good news is that as part of my negotiations, each of you is guaranteed 1 year of employment. During that time, I strongly encourage you to make every effort to prove to them that you are a valuable employee. Just so you know, I also sold them my farm, and Wally sold them his farm as well. Wally signed a long-term contract with Cargill to manage both farms, and we all know what a great job he does and will continue to do for them. The shock I noticed on their faces intensified and turned to fury. The first to speak was Tom, the oldest and unofficial leader of the Gentry clan. "What the hell have you done, Jack? You ruined the family business because my sister cheated on you? What kind of man are you anyway? How did you get my father to sell you his stock? What lies did you tell him?" "I'll tell you what, Tom," I said. "First, your father sold me his stock to keep you out of jail, to keep Carl out of jail, and to keep Kelly out of jail. You ask what kind of man I am. But you have to ask yourself what kind of man you are, what kind of man your brother is, and what kind of woman your sister is." I tossed the second DVD onto the middle of the table. "I think this video will answer all your questions about why all this is happening. It clearly shows you attacking me in the yard the night I was attacked. It clearly shows you and Carl attacking me. It clearly shows you leaving my house with my belongings. Consider yourself lucky I chose this method of revenge rather than handing the case over to Detectives Robbins and Carter." Kelly finally spoke up. "Jack, how can you do this to me?" "Kelly, you're a different matter. You make me feel like I've wasted my life. Your father has always treated my father well enough, but always kind of second-rate dumb farm boy. Tom and Carl treated me about the same way, always thinking you were too good for the likes of me. You were my best friend, but also thought you were better than me in so many ways. I always felt that way. You were a conniving lover. You promised to be exclusive with me and immediately slept with Larry Evandale. You were a cheating wife, disrespected me in our marriage by cheating on me with these men. When you watch this video, remember that I saw every second and heard every word. And worst of all, Kelly, you're a bad best friend. Do you know I almost died during the attack? If the paramedics hadn't gotten there in time, I would have died. You, Kelly, almost destroyed the man you said you loved so much. I'd call that bad friend behavior, don't you think?" Kelly passed out. Amber and Carl rushed over to her to pick her up before she fell off the chair. Amber went to get a cold cloth to bring her to her senses. When she regained consciousness, I took one last shot. "Now you know that your father sold me his stock to keep all three of you out of jail. He's not very proud of his children except for you, Amber, and I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot more about that in the future. Like I said, I think I've wasted most of my life on you, Kelly, but I won't waste any more of my future on you. Have a happy life." With those words, I walked out the door, finalizing all the deals. I was free and could move on with my life. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.